Welcome to TradeTheNBA.com. This is John. This report is for the 27th, and we had quite a day with the Fed announcement and another wild one where we were up almost 100 points again on the ES, only to have it fall all the way back down and close negative. And this is something I talked about when we were looking at both the rising red as well as the white leading on this. The positive on it was that dip of orange here on the DOC, and when that does happen, usually we do see some type of bounce back. So the fact that we're hanging around that 23%, not too surprising at this particular stage. We got some midterm buyers jumped into the setup in here, but that red DOC so far down there at minus 22. It's in what we would usually refer to as bounce area, but usually takes more than the first one for it to try and recover. And you can see this was the first ending without dip below the red line on the extreme. So there are some slightly bullish things within that. You always also see the magenta rising. And it's above gold, the yellow line, which it's enough, but really what we're likely to see is just back and forth. And again, it's easy for us because the 23% becomes that critical focus line, which is right around 53. So above that, safe to take the longs. Below it, I think that the concentration, depending on the intraday chart, is definitely going to be to the weak side. And this hyper range, though, is probably going to continue, as I expected. I said before, the volatility in these ranges is going to remain elevated as people try to figure out whether the Fed is actually going to do anything, or the talk seemed a little bit more hawkish than some might have liked. The easing of the balance sheet, of course, is not going to be enough to counter inflation. And we know the effects that's going to have, which certainly we'll see when we look at, as I was talking about, interest rates, and we'll see that in TLT. When we're looking at the NQ, decidedly weaker, much lower in that range, and well below that 23%. Didn't even make it to 38 like the S&P did. And you can see that's much flatter, but same configuration here on the DOC. And so that's worth pointing out because it's not all grim. And of course, that's can be very tough for shorts when you see a rise of plus 80 points. You think that it's just going to continue forever. Shocking to have that kind of sell-off to go all the way from that high to negative read. Gold, obviously, when you get big sell-offs like that. Tend to feel it in there, but again, the pressure is still going to be for overall rise in gold. So periodic moves back and forth, not unexpected in any way, shape, or form. That added to the strength of the dollar, that there would be a tightening, sending the euro lower, and I would expect that the euro may even break below that 0% line at the 118, and even go further, because I think 1.08 range is probably the low side, but certainly it can accelerate because the EU is in really bad straits. This is the problem. Oil, as it continues to rise, it's going to just fuel that inflationary pressure, and there's no way out for the Fed on that unless something changes in that oil dynamic. And given the prescription that the administration has when it comes to energy policy, I don't think you're likely to see that, and that is going to be problematic and continue to exacerbate the inflation problem. So when we were bouncing back up here on those early down days, people were seeking cover. I still said that expectation was to move all the way back down and see TLT, in this case, just it's the 20-year Treasury, the inversion of it. As it goes lower, rates go higher, and I expect that to move back towards the 125 range in that. So that's going to be quite a shock for some people to see that, and that's the market forces, literally forcing rates higher, regardless of what the Fed does. Interestingly enough, Bitcoin then held up quite well until that announcement, and then it started to fade pretty quickly there. Every time we see that magenta dip to that 25 where you have an uptick on white, it's usually a pretty good opportunity to attack the setup shorts. ETH was another good one. It was rising nicely, held up very strong, and then the short signal started to come in midway into that discussion from the Fed and kicked all the way throughout the entire range. So nothing surprising from that standpoint. From 50K, we had that bounce back that took place right there, and then there it is. That dip below the 25 took place early on, but not enough to get the white spiking up above. It spiked just a little bit further over, and well below, in this case below the 19 range, and that was pretty clear. You had a brief bounce up, but pushed it all the way back down to the 0% with the white leading. And that takes us to the 5K chart. And early on, there was that positive move, as you can see. Even within it, though, there were still brief periods of sell action and kept pushing up towards the middle relentlessly. And it just provided just some beautiful back and forth. Everything was very clean from Nalgo. Some of these, while they were back and forth and didn't do a whole lot, every time we got up towards those high peaks and developed the signal, it's just one of those where you just have to count on that. The breakdown right here below 33, but once it got below 25, it's usually the catalyst. Always a little heart stopping when you get the purple candle in that, and then you see the magenta pivot up on NBI, and in this particular case, though, it got above it and then broke right below it almost immediately, and then once it pivoted below 25 from having been above, that's opportunity to attack further, and sure enough, that led to the full move all the way back down. And I think that's something important to watch for, even when it happens in decline moves and that. You'll get a bounce back, but anytime you see that pivot lower, it's an opportunity to attack it. You can see here as the Fed announcement came through, that just led to a continuation of white leading most of those, and every time there was an attempt pivot below the 25, and you can just keep following them. All these pivots that below the 25 led to continuation to the downside. And then as the end of the day started to peak, we started seeing magenta take a little bit more strength. And again, this is another one that I like to look for when you get that move towards white and magenta. If you don't see that magenta cross back below or underneath that 10 level, oftentimes you're going to get that nice bounce back, and that's exactly what happened with that. It's still a little bit red there, but once it crossed right above, still had plenty of opportunities to exit within that. It went ahead, took the earlier short as it was developing back over here, and so that's the beauty of being able to see that. It lets you adjust appropriately. And then it just kind of meandered back and forth here. We had a couple little soft shorts, this one with the white leading, but the magenta pivoted up. It still would have expected that to move to the 50% level, which it did do a little bit later in the post-market setup, and that's where it ended. Right now, just off 11, but we're right in between all of these pre-established algo levels, so none of that's changed, and you can see that upper range. There's quite a gap between where we get the significances within these, and they're right in the mid 44s as well as in the mid 43 range, going all the way back down, and then below you can see down at the 42s. So we get that back and forth, and it's just a matter of following what it is. But some of these were just very nice plays, and that kind of added volatility really just allows for a lot of intraday day trading, whether on the 50K or even on 5K. Really gave some excellent opportunities, so I think that's all encouraging, and it's such a nice reinforcement to see whenever we get those consistent pivots like below that 25. Pretty good likelihood where you're going with that. If the white had spiked further, you might have expected more than a move to the 50%, but immediately the magenta cross back above, and it just makes it easy to be able to get out because you can see even with the wick on this where it still lets you get out, and you can see it's clearly going bullish and prepare to make those flips. So all encouraging stuff, and I keep adding these details into the programs, so that's just going to continue to add to it. As always, though, I will continue to update you on Skype chat. Trade well. We'll talk to you later.